Hi, I'm Ann Devison. Tonight's film, written and narrated by Michael Cordell, is about an entertaining subject, but it's also an important one. The Last Film Search is an account of a 2-year hunt for early Australian film, which was organised by the National Film Archives in Canberra. Hundreds and thousands of feet of old nitrate film has been, or is still, tucked away in people's attics or sheds or on their shelves, all in danger of decomposing and once gone, gone forever. The actual search uncovered well over 1 million feet of film, and since then another 1 million has come to light. But the people at the Film Archives are convinced there's more. So if you're hanging on to any precious spools, hand them over for copying before it's too late.
It was called The Last Film Search, the first project of its kind in the world. The aim? To find what remained of Australia's early films before they rotted away. I landed the job of finding them and began on a journey which took me 2 years round Australia, searching for old films. The project was launched in 1981 by the National Film Archive in Canberra with outside sponsorship. It had been a long-held dream of the archive's director, Ray Edmondson.
The message is that 5% of our silent film history is all that survives up to 1930, which is quite horrific. We've got about 5 years to find it. And, okay, we're looking for later material too, but we're talking about the nitrate era up to 1950, and that's mostly silent.
What do you see as the best approach out in the field?
And then you need to get onto the local media. We'll send out a release as you hit each town. You get onto the local television station, radio station, into the local press. Let people know you're here, know what you look like. Communicate the message.
I think the best approach from my end is field trips of about 2 or 3 weeks with a car and van, then aiming to come back to Canberra for 3 or 4 days. After that, just to tie up any loose ends and then to head back out into the country. North for winter, south for summer. And first of all, I think I'll head west.
And so the search began. My job was to ride the boundary as field officer, chasing leads and generating publicity. Meanwhile, the rest of the gang worked from Canberra. Save the old nitrate films before they turned to dust. That was our mission. They called us the Raiders of the Lost Art.
Well, on to RG, you're listening to Narandra Leeton Bits and Pieces. It's nice to have you along. And would you believe that someone's still out there looking for the Kelly gang? Well, in this modern age, you'd hardly believe it, would you? But we'll catch up on that a little later on. Someone to talk all about it. It's Michael Cordell from the National Film and Sound Archive. You're appealing to anyone who may have old films.
Yeah, well, we're basically looking for anything that moves. I mean, be it home movies, feature films, newsreels, anything on film that's vaguely old. So if people have got something, they can contact us in Canberra.
Is there any particular film that you'd really like to get hold of?
Yeah, the film everyone talks about is Australia's first feature film, which was made in 1906 and called The Story of the Kelly Gang. The film was about over an hour long, but all we have is 2 minutes.
What's the oldest film you found?
The oldest is the 1897 Melbourne Cup. I phoned up someone on an unrelated matter, and the woman I was speaking to mentioned that her husband had found this film out at the Sandown Racecourse. Funnily enough, the oldest film the archive has is the 1896 Melbourne Cup, which must say something about the passion Australians have for horse racing.
That's right.
But some of the films that intrigue me most of all are some of the early commercials, the cinema commercials.
Why must I only dream of you, all on my own?
Yeah, man, you keep on dreaming. Yeah, man, you keep on dreaming of me. Till you're real that only that refreshing life for ends lonely days and nights. Personal freshness gets in my thought at night. So here's a word of wisdom, folks. Don't let yourself go. A daily bout with life, why will stop?
Don't risk offending. Take a daily bath with Lifebuoy.
Lifebuoy is the soap with that famous health element that guards personal freshness.
From your head down to your toe, Lifebuoy stops that old BO.
It's longer lasting.
Gentle enough for baby's skin. A real protective lather.
Get Lifebuoy toilet soap right away.
So here's a word of wisdom, folks. Don't let yourself go. A daily bath with life, why will stop?
After barnstorming the media in each town, I'd pull up at the local theatre on the hunch that there'd be some old film left lying around. I'd chase up the owner or the projectionist, like Norm Odewan in Leeton.
I think both of them could be there.
It turned out that Norm had a couple of films that had been sitting in the projection box for nearly 50 years, showing scenes from Leeton in the mid-30s.
Great. Can we have a look at it?
Yeah, okay. I'll put it on for you.
Great.
The film turned out to be a simple record of the Leeton show in 1936.
It brings back memories. I remember particularly coming here to the cinema that night and seeing it. It's a big thrill, all right?
It was filmed by the local theatre owner, who specially hired a camera for the occasion. The film stands as a valuable record of activities in a small country town half a century ago. Actual events captured on film. Actuality filming began more than 40 years earlier. This was Redfern Station in Sydney, 1899. It is amongst the oldest films found during the search. From Sydney to Brisbane, peak hour traffic in Queen Street the same year. The Lumiere cinematograph, the most popular of the early cameras, was being used to record simple scenes of everyday life. "18 years later, by now the movie camera, considered at first a gimmick, was firmly established. And so, when our soldiers came home wounded but smiling from the First World War, there was a camera crew there to record it. These shots come from a documentary depicting the activities of the Red Cross in the war years. It shows a growing sophistication in film technique. The static camera was beginning to move like the eye, though not quite so smoothly. From the human wastage of war to the wastage of the Depression, in the late 20s, the Melbourne branch of the Brotherhood of St. Lawrence developed a small film unit which used the increasingly popular 16mm film. They made a series of short fundraising films for showing at public meetings. They called this film Beautiful Melbourne. It sat for years in a cupboard, often close to being thrown out. Meanwhile, the Burley Company in Sydney was employing the medium for a different purpose. Using early colour stenciled film from overseas and later making their own productions, they were quick to see the ability of film to sell things, projecting images of what form the ideal woman should take. All with the help of a Burley undergarment.
The real value of things like these lies in more intangible realms. The realms of beauty, of comfort, of health. The real value of a foundation lies in what it does for its owner. And a Burley can always be relied upon to do something to enhance the natural beauty of every woman. And compliments such as these are always music to receptive ears.
My dear, you look so slim. You've lost inches.
Well, my dear, you've done me proud.
Oh, Mom, you look absolutely super.
Darling, you look lovelier than ever. And as each woman graciously acknowledges the compliment with "thank you, darling," she knows that the basis of a charming appearance is a correctly fitted foundation garment by Burley.
I soon realised that the search was becoming much more than just a hunt for old films. In looking for the films, I was going on a strange journey, rummaging through the disappearing world of country cinemas and the people who ran them. Once upon a time, back in the heyday of the cinema, every town with its dot on the map had a picture show. Every Saturday night in 100 different towns, the coloured lights came on. At home, the men polished their shoes, the women preened and the kids giggled. It was time to go to the flicks. At places like the Amuse You in Manildra, New South Wales, isolated country folk got to know Mary Pickford and Charlie Chaplin. They laughed at caricatures of themselves in the form of Dad and Dave, and flocked to see the coronation of the Queen and the racing of the Melbourne Cup. The operator was considered a man of some importance, a merchant of dreams and entertainment for these small groups of people stuck out in the Australian bush. Alan Tom was the typical picture show operator who started screening films way back in the days of the silent cinema. While most country theatres are long dead, Alan struggles to keep the Amuse You running.
And how's the show going?
Okay, not too good tonight for as far as an audience is concerned.
What's
There's
that?
only about 20 or 30 people in there, I
Not
think.
much shop, is it? How long have you been running here now?
Oh, since 1936 in this theatre.
Do the kids give you much trouble?
Oh, no.
They behave themselves?
Not too bad, no. Not really good. They have done in time, but we had to put a few out.
No mischief in the back rows?
No, very little. Well, up in the back rows here, we call that the swimming pool.
How's that?
Where they learn the breaststroke.
Like a lot of the old-timers I met, Alan loved the chance to bend an ear with stories of the old days.
Interesting. Amuse you touring talkies.
Yeah.
And what, you used to tour around, what, to different towns, taking the show, did you?
Yeah, it's all around we're about 200 or 300 miles, Manila, really.
But when did you start?
We started touring that way in 1932. Yes, the day we got bogged completely. We eventually got through and got the show on at Fifield that night.
The show always goes on.
The show must go on. Yeah.
And what's this thing here?
That's the silent sound on disc.
Right. Well, what year's that?
That was 1932.
And where's there must have been a film with it. What's that?
Oh, yes, that's a trailer, you see. So I had a trailer about, I suppose about 400 or 500 feet, but it all melted together over the years, and
really?
You couldn't undo it or anything else, so I put it out on the footpath and put a match to it.
Yeah? Burnt it?
Yeah.
Yeah? We must have been screening for, what, 55, 60 years? Why do you keep on doing it?
It's in the blood and I like it, I suppose, but we battled against the television and colour television, and now the video, it's been the final stab, I'd say.
2 weeks later, the doors of the Amuse You closed for the last time. While early film exhibitors travelled around screening films, others made them. Cyril Sharp made a peculiar living out of making the same film again and again in different country towns. All the actors were locals, with the charming Dot played by young Sadie Logan, niece of the projectionist. The battle for Dot's love takes itself to the local elections. The printer attempts to defeat his foe by running a malicious item in the local paper. Dot is heartbroken for her real love, but the law steps in. Not all amateur dramas had the syrupy sentiments of The Adventures of Dot. Of all the films found during the search, strangely enough, it was this one that aroused most interest. Its origins are obscure. The filmmakers didn't see fit to include any end credits, and the stars, they were happy remaining anonymous. Made sometime in the late 20s, its coyness soon explodes into an explicit ménage à trois, which can't be shown. Porn films, though rarely so explicit, were not uncommon, but this one had a twist. Found during the demolition of a Sydney mansion, this film was screened in the private theatre of a wealthier family. It would appear to be French. On my travels, I discovered an almost secret world of film collectors and film enthusiasts. While most of us sit in front of the TV on Sunday nights, once a month, there is a strange gathering. Ernie Schumann is an old projectionist who epitomizes the classic film collector. Monthly, his friends, many who once worked in the film industry, gather to bask in the nostalgia of old films in Ernie's backyard cinema. Collectors like Ernie can take credit for having saved much of our film history.
Well, it went A number. I did duets.
Did you?
Oh, my
all
word.
those terrific.
Yes.
Still a few theatres going, yeah, but in Tasmania there's only about 4 theatres now.
The really big films.
Oh, yes.
I visited many collectors like Ernie. Some were cautious about parting with their hard-earned film. But in Adelaide, I met a collector named Murray Matthews, who came up with a gem.
I might just think this film up from Adelaide yesterday.
The stock then is 1918.
It's pretty exciting stuff.
There's a Southern Cross feature film company. It was one of their productions, and they went on to make The Bloke a year later, but they would have, they were based in Adelaide, and they would have shot it in Adelaide. That's Lottie Lyle. That's definitely The Woman Suffers. So we've got a fourth Longford, another Longford film. That's incredible. It's just amazing that this survives.
Made by Raymond Longford and Lottie Lyle, The Woman Suffers is a classic from the silent era. A story of revenge and manipulation, it treated its theme with a sensitivity rare for the time. The enigmatic Lottie also appeared as the film's star, an actress whose expressive face never left the need for words. Longford and Lyle were partners and lovers. Together, they made over 20 feature films. The Woman Suffers is now only the fourth to have survived. The kilometres mounted and the towns passed by. For every film that turned up, there were a dozen false leads. In Wollongong, I got a call from Dave Cox, projectionist at the Vista Theatre. Ironically, while the curtain closes on the Amuse You back in Manildra, the Vista is one theatre that is beginning to make a comeback.
Oh, we're doing some renovations here. Might get the old place back in the full steam ahead again. Yeah, watch your step, Mike.
Right.
This is where we used to keep the film out here. This is the film storage room. It hasn't been used for many years.
Right.
Oh, whoops.
Door's a bit shonky.
It's a bit of maintenance there. Yeah, this is none of the old election stuff from years by.
Right. Let's go and have a look at it.
Yeah, sure.
What looks silent? What year do you think it is? Oh, what does that say?
It's very hard to say. What's this? The colour of Mr. Garden's comrades would not be popular in white Australia.
Oh,
I'd
talking about the
suggest.
Bolshevik threat.
Oh, I'd say so.
How long's it been sitting here?
Oh, 40, 50 years longer.
Right.
More titles here. Geez, they used to... You could tell it was a silent era. They used to put everything down in writing.
The condition's a bit crooked, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's all nitrate stock, and it's starting to deteriorate really bad. It's not in good nick.
Of course, many films were in such poor condition that we couldn't screen them. With the fast-growing popularity of the flicks in the early part of the century, films soon became used as a propaganda tool, especially when it came election time. But the eagerness of some politicians to get up there on the silver screen sometimes did them more harm than good. Not much was heard of Mr. Sampson after this.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm standing before you as a country party candidate independently so that I will be free to do as you wish. I stand for the country party because it is the only party in my estimation that can serve the country people. I wish to introduce my family, who are an old family of this country. My wife, who is the mother of 5 Australians, and the grandmother of 3. My father, who is in his 86th year, and the first Samson came out here 152 years ago. My son Hugh, the second eldest of my sons. The other 2 are too busy to be here today. My daughter and son-in-law, Mr. and Mrs. Fred Moore, with their 2 children, the 6th generation of Australian born. My other daughter and son-in-law, Mr. and Mrs. Ray Collins, and their 6th generation of Australian born, who is just 1 month old. I've just done this to show you that I am no newcomer to the country, that we have been here for 152 years. And I think that it is about time that you had Australians to represent Australia in your parliament. Thank you.
From state elections to World War II, these films survived as the rallying cries for those left on the home front.
The Commonwealth Government urgently appeals to you and you and you to assist in the canning of these products, which must be handled, packed, and got to our soldiers at battle stations immediately. Girls and women in this audience, this dramatic appeal is to you. Your help is vital. It may mean the sacrifice of some of your leisure, but what of it? What is any sacrifice you can make compared with theirs? Apply at once. 32, Martin Place.
Lend. Lend. Lend all you can. Invest in the loan and back the attack.
While the film production houses were busy cogs in the wartime propaganda machine, some people were making their own films about the effects of the war. Home movies. In Bridgetown, Western Australia, Charles Zinnecker filmed scenes of troops preparing to depart for the war in Europe. At Norseman, near the Kalgoorlie goldfields, Alf Curtis shot similar scenes in colour on his new 8mm Keystone camera. A little later, Neville Govett, an amateur film buff, ventured beyond the conventions of the home movie and made what he called Neville Govett's Movie Magazine. He documented war precautions in Melbourne, including the brownout, painting curbs and shielding lights so that the city would be made less visible in case of attack from the air. Other civil defence measures were taken as the Prime Minister, John Curtin, warned of sterner times ahead.
Let there be no idle hands. We here in this spacious land, where for more than 150 years peace and security have prevailed, are now called upon to meet the external aggressor. I have said that our forces are at their battle station. They are not alone.
And when the war ended, Neville Govett was there to record Victory Day in Brisbane. I lost count of all the small country towns I went through, but the death of the local picture theatre seemed to reflect their demise. In their heyday, the towns bustled with activity. There was an air of optimism and pride. But times changed, and people slowly drifted to the cities. The country towns were left with as many faded memories as the boarded-up picture theatres. For all the romance of travelling the country looking for old films, it was a lonely job.
One helping of Kellogg's cornflakes with milk and sugar provides you with enough energy to play 4 strenuous sets of tennis. Or you can swim 750 yards at top speed, or serve behind the counter for 3.5 hours. Always say Kellogg's before you say cornflakes.
Julie. G'day, it's me. I don't know. Some little place called Bunnan. No, it's not big. No, not even a pub.
Right, I got a lead for you. A guy in Merriwa.
Right, yeah, I'm fairly close.
Blue. That's how he's known, and you can only get hold of him through the post office at Merriwa.
Okay. Right, well, I'll get across there today.
Some people I will never forget. Blue Walsh told me he's 80-odd. He lives alone in a tin shack, painted with any paint he can muster.
G'day. Blue, are you?
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
I caught it off.
Nice to see you. Yeah, I feel about you.
Blue's been a farm labourer all his life, but his love is film. He stores them in an old milking shed at the back of his house.
Yes, this is my little private film exchange. Yes, this is where I keep my films. Yes. Right. Well, you gonna have a look?
Yes. Just come over.
Yeah, right.
Nice colour.
Huh?
Nice colour.
Oh, yes.
Got more films here than MGM, Blue?
Yes, a nice little exchange, yes.
What, silent?
Yes, silent, sound, colour.
News?
Mixture, you know. I've been collecting them for years, here, there, and everywhere.
Right.
I've got odd ones out of second-hand shops. I saw them in the window, and there's one of their own kitchen fire.
Can we have a look at one, do you think?
Well, what would you like?
What do you got?
Well, I wouldn't say old, but,
What's that?
newsreel, about the 1930s.
Right, I'm just going to have a look at that one.
Blue screens his films with an old hand-wound projector. He's just bought a generator to power the house and his projector lamp. Before that, he used a torch to light up the screen.
I spoke into projection boxes when I was a kid. I think you'd go to school. Couldn't see it all in 1918. And of course, you know, the projectionists, they just kept eye on me, but they didn't say nothing much. And he gave me a piece of film, and I thought I was made. Come home with a strip of film, a silent film. I thought it was marvellous. And that's how I got mixed up in it. Of course, these modern talking machines now, they just press a button, away they go. I just as soon crank that old cinematograph and watch a few old silent pictures and we'll look at television. I find television pictures are too fast. You don't get time to look at them. They're there and they're gone. Especially them commercials. They very fast pictures. I think I belong to the old silent times. I'm out of date with these modern times, really. Switch.
What's this? No newsreel, is it?
Yeah, I told you a while ago.
You know what year?
No.
You got to crank fairly fast.
Yeah. Oh, sound film, you can go flat out. Oh, silent, you vary.
Right. How long have you had this thing for?
20 years or more.
Right. How old is it?
About 1900. Work it out, 1900 it's made.
Puts up a good image, doesn't it?
Oh, it's not bad. It's old machine, it's wore out, half wore out, you know.
Right. How often you set it up like this?
Oh, I'm here on my own. I only show once a week or just when I feel like it. Oh, I've got some people.
While people like Blue were happy collecting films, more and more enthusiasts began making them. When the newsreel crews sometimes missed out on capturing important events, like a visit by Charles Kingsford Smith and the Southern Cross, there was a good chance a home movie camera was there doing the job. But the subject of most home movies was a little different.
Yes, there's John Ramsay, we call him Blue Ramsay. He's got all the feathers that are made on John, the great big black moustache, only cork, you know, burnt cork. I was 20, and it was up at Pikedale, as you know, the station property was supposed to be the most lovely place.
In the 20s, Joyce Holden took home movies one step further.
We made this rough canoe and made it to look a bit, you know, to suit the Indian, the canoeing. And see the fish, they wouldn't sink because we made them of cardboard and they wouldn't go down. Here's Lone Wolf seeking his revenge. So there we are now, we're going to be tied to the tree. Fate worse than death. There's Nancy, she can't do a part for laughing. And look at those long-waisted dresses which we wore in those days. Here comes John. He's going to tackle her. Look at him sneaking up. And of course, John could no more act than fly.
He's being very energetic.
Very. Oh, they have a great fight, you see. We're still lashed to the tree.
How long did it take you to make?
Oh, we spread it out over the fortnight. I stayed there. But in between work, of course, the men had to do drenching and there were sheep roundups and all sorts of things and visitors to the homestead. There were always many, many visitors there. And so it was just an in-between. Here we are on the river again, lone wolves paddling away with me, taking me to a unknown destination. And now John comes to rescue me. I see I pulled down the skirt before getting out of the canoe, all very ladylike, and away we went into the shadows.
In 1939, Ken Pierce shot this brief home movie of a couple of young boys riding on a sheep's back. One boy would be Prime Minister. His name? Bob Hawke. Most home movies had a characteristic gaiety and warmth, but some revealed a different side to human nature. From the killing of a kangaroo to crocodile hunting in the Northern Territory, these shots are from a semi-professional film promoting outback safaris in the 1920s and 30s. Some amateur filmmakers developed their craft far beyond the standard of the home movie and moved into the realm of the professional documentary. Superbly shot, these sequences come from a film called Among the Man-Eaters of New Guinea. It is thought to have been shot in the 1930s by a Danish adventurer, Jens Bjerre, while on patrol in the New Guinea highlands. It stands as an invaluable piece of anthropology, showing the body of a woman taken from a death house, her body preserved by smoke. During my journey, many strange things happened. Roger Piper left a note on the windscreen of my car saying he had lots of old film. His real love soon became obvious as we weaved through his small bush property.
The bin's over here.
There was evidence to suggest it would have been quicker walking to Roger's film from the house in the first place. But Roger insisted we go by rail, even though a minor derailing had slowed us further. By the time we got there, it was quite late.
Well, it's interesting. Why do you keep them out here?
Well, it just happened that that's where they were left when I arrived here on the truck from Bathurst.
Right. What's this one?
I
It's
haven't
a
had time to put
horse
them
race or something?
There's a Melbourne Cup on it, an old Melbourne Cup. Very old.
Silent. Do you know what year it is?
About 1923, something like that.
Looks interesting. What else you got in here?
There was King Edward's funeral.
Right.
And some American westerns.
A bit grubby.
Yeah.
What's on this one? Like an bit of an old feature.
Yeah, it is.
Got some interesting films here. Can we take some of these back to Canberra and have a look?
Yeah, that'd be all right.
Like, you can see they're all starting to deteriorate. It'd be good if we could transfer them onto modern film stock.
Right.
Because you're all going to go otherwise. That'd be good. Old colours going in here.
Yeah, it's just tinted stuff.
What's that? Do you know?
Oh, that's an old cereal, Saturday afternoon cereal.
Looks like mining though.
Oh, that could be the Hill End one. Yeah, that's the Hill End one. Windless. Yeah.
What? Or mining?
Yeah, sort of showing what happened at Hill End years ago.
Pretty old.
Yeah, that'd been 23, 24.
Where'd you get that?
Proprietor of a picture theatre in Bathurst gave it to me. He's dead now.
Sifting through the hundreds of old theatres, sorting through the thousands of reels of film, we had unearthed many treasures. By the end of nearly 2 years, when my own part in the mission had almost come to an end, I had an idea of how it felt when the first person to travel around Australia by car finally arrived in Perth back in 1925. We had retrieved well over 1 million feet of film, putting a significant percentage of our film history back up on the screen. But the film we had all been hoping for eluded us. Australia's first feature made in 1906, the story of the Kelly Gang. We still only had 2 minutes from the 60-minute epic. There had been leads. One man called me and claimed that his father had a print of the film that he kept stored in an old fridge so it wouldn't go off. He was cautious about giving me his name and never called back.
Would you mind, do you think, if we had a look at it?
Yeah, I really don't think I could give you his number. Look, I'll think about it and I'll call you back.
Okay.
I still don't know if it was a prank. But then, news came through from Victoria. 2 young men had found an old can on a Melbourne tip. Inside was a decomposing roll of film. They took it into the offices of cinema papers. Someone's garbage turned out to be another 2-minute segment from the story of the Kelly Gang. Now 4 minutes from Australia's first feature film have been rescued. Out there somewhere, there are a lot more forgotten films to be saved. While the initial thrust of the project is over, the search itself will continue forever.
That was very nice, Miss Lester. And if you can sing as well as you can play, we're going to like you.
Thank you very much.
Now, I understand you've been playing leads with J.C. Williamson.
Yes, I've just finished White Horse Inn.
That's very nice. Now, would you say how do you do to that imaginary gentleman over there, please?
How do you do?
That's very nice. Now we're going to ask you to sing.
Certainly, I'd be glad to.
Well, the latest news from the National Film and Sound Archives is that they're now hunting for early television material. So much of this has also been destroyed or mislaid. Next